Last December, a single act triggered the series of anti-government demonstrations that have led to huge changes and also challenges, bringing about instability, threatening U.S. interests in the Arab world.
That initial act happened in Tunisia, and this morning our week-long series, The Arab Summer, focuses on the continuing struggles in that North African country. We begin this morning with CBS News correspondent Alan Pizzey. He is in Tripoli, Libya this morning with a look back at Tunisia's sudden revolution.
NATO bombing aside, Libya is an incongruous place to find oneself in the Arab summer, sandwiched between the two most successful revolts. The wave of revolt that has tossed aside dictators and driven countries to the brink of civil war began in the most unlikely of places for the most basic of reasons, a final indignity. A young vegetable seller was slapped by a policewoman when he objected to what he saw as extortion. Mohamed Bouazizi reacted by setting himself on fire and set off what became known as the Jasmine Revolution, an incongruously gentle name for a revolt that was as unrelenting as it was bold. News of the event sparked violent protests, something neither the autocratic government nor anyone else ever expected in Tunisia.
When the revolution began, we found ourselves in a very difficult situation, because we knew that we wanted democracy, but we didn't know, and we still don't know what type of democracy.
The government's violent countermeasures simply fueled more anger. And within a month of protesters hitting the streets, the autocratic and corrupt rule of President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali was over, and he and his family left for exile in Saudi Arabia, barely a month after Mohamed Bouazizi killed himself. But the uprising was driven less by politics than by simple economics. Unemployed college graduates demanded more jobs and an end to police brutality and blatant self-enrichment by a family that had ruled for 23 years. Activists used the technology of the internet to trade tactics on how to evade surveillance, stand up to rubber bullets and tear gas, and organize street protests. The final casualty toll of running battles would end up with more than 700 killed and injured. Having broken the fear factor, young Tunisians established the first of what has become the hallmark of the revolts that have followed. They took over Kasbah Square in the center of the capital Tunis and vowed to stay until the government was dismantled and new and fair elections were held. Elections scheduled for July have been postponed until October to allow more time for organizers to prepare.
The major challenges is to organize successful elections first, and then to put in place the right mechanisms to have a real democratic life in Tunisia.
The copycat uprisings that the Jasmine Revolution sparked have some way to run, and even Tunisia is far from settled. Coffers once filled by thriving tourism are as empty as many of the beaches, but things are getting better.
We are free also to criticize the government. It's something completely new for Tunisian citizens.
President Obama called Tunisia the vanguard of the democratic wave sweeping across the Middle East and promised to back up his praise with money. And the G8 countries are to hand out $20 billion to Tunisia and Egypt to promote reform. Ironically, Tunisia needs help and money to cope with the flood of refugees who came through its borders to escape the revolt in Libya that the Jasmine Revolution inspired. And in another twist, Tunisia is the only land route into Libya. A single border crossing on the north coast is now Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's main supply line.